Have you ever felt like the life you were born into was never meant for you? Like the house was too small, the meals too scarce, and the dreams too big for the world around you to even understand? If you ever felt this way, this story is for you. His name was Marcus, and he grew up in a two-room house on the edge of a town that time had mostly forgotten. The walls were thin, the roof leaked when it rained, and the refrigerator was often more empty than full. His father worked long hours at a factory, coming home with hands that told the story of a life spent grinding for other people's dreams. His mother cleaned houses across town 6 days a week, returning in the evenings too tired to lift her arms, but somehow always finding the energy to ask Marcus how his day went. They were not a family drowning in self-pity. They were a family held together by love and routine. But poverty has a way of making you feel invisible, and Marcus felt that invisibility every single day. At school, Marcus was not the smartest kid in the room by the conventional measure of things. He was not the fastest, not the most popular, and not the one teachers pulled aside to tell about scholarships and futures. What he had was a habit that nobody around him quite understood. He thought out loud. Not in a disruptive way, but in the way that showed his mind was always somewhere else, always turning something over, always asking why things were the way they were, and whether they had to stay that way. His teachers sometimes mistook this for distraction. What they did not realize was that Marcus was doing something far more powerful than paying attention to the curriculum. He was imagining a life that did not yet exist. When Marcus was 14, something happened. A man named Mr. Eaton moved into the neighborhood. He was older, quiet, and drove a car that looked slightly out of place on that particular street. He was not wealthy by the world's definition. Mr. Eaton had a habit of sitting on his front porch in the evenings with a book. Marcus passed that porch every day on his walk home, and one afternoon, almost by accident, the two of them made eye contact at the exact moment Marcus was kicking a can down the road out of pure boredom. Mr. Eaton asked him what he was thinking about. Marcus, caught off guard, said he was thinking about why some people had so much and others had so little. Mr. Eaton looked at him for a long moment before saying something Marcus would carry with him for the rest of his life. He said, "The people with so much did not start there. They started exactly where you are standing. They just refused to think the size of their problem. They chose to think the size of their answer." That sentence broke something open in Marcus. Not in a dramatic, immediate way, but in the slow and permanent way. He started spending afternoons on Mr. Eaton's porch. The older man told him all his life experience and told him never to stop thinking big, because thinking big is the beginning of prosperity. By 16, Marcus had started doing odd jobs around the neighborhood. Not because he needed spending money the way teenagers typically do, but because he had begun to see something in every transaction that most people miss entirely. He was studying how things worked. He watched who paid for what and why. He noticed that the people who ran the small businesses in his area were not necessarily smarter than his father. They were simply positioned differently. He started asking questions not just of Mr. Eaton, but of the shop owners themselves, the women who ran catering out of their kitchens, the man who fixed cars in his driveway on weekends. He treated every conversation like a class no school was offering. At 18, Marcus graduated from high school, with no fanfare. His parents were proud but quietly terrified on his behalf. He started a small service business with money he had saved from working in the neighborhood. The work was unglamorous and physically demanding, but Marcus always made his customers happy. By his mid-20s, Marcus had expanded into property maintenance contracts. He had read every book Mr. Eaton had recommended, and then gone looking for more on his own. He had made mistakes, lost a contract, misjudged a hire, overextended himself financially in a way that had him lying awake at 3 in the morning running numbers in his head. The neighborhood he had grown up in had not changed much on the surface, but Marcus had quietly become a different kind of presence in it. Young people came to him now the way he had once gone to Mr. Eaton, not because he had figured everything out, but because he was evidence that figuring it out was possible. He had not moved to a different city or a better zip code to prove something. He had stayed and built something visible and real in a place that needed visible. The story of Marcus is not unique in its outcome. History is filled with names we know and thousands we do not. People who started with empty pockets and overcrowded rooms, and went on to build things the world had not asked for yet. What made them different was never their starting point. It was the refusal to let the smallness of that starting point determine the size of their thinking. You do not need permission to think bigger than your circumstances. You do not need a mentor to find you, though it helps. You do not need to know the whole path. If you have ever felt like you were meant for something more but could not find the door, this story is for you. Because the door Marcus walked through was never locked from the outside. It was only ever locked from within. And the moment you begin to think at the level of the life you want, rather than the level of the life you have, everything that happens next becomes possible.